Hey guys, welcome back to Connor Reads, and I did it. I finally finished The Lord of Chaos. So I'm going to be going through my reactions. I'm going to be going through my big predictions moving forwards and just overall general chit chat about this book because it was absolutely incredible. So before we go any further, there will be a spoiler warning. I'm going to obviously talk all about this book. So if you haven't read it, please pause the video, go read the book and come back. So the last couple of hundred pages of this book were absolutely jam-packed. So first off, let's talk about what happened in these last couple of pages and my reactions to it. So the first huge thing that happened was Perrin appears. In the first couple of chapters, it's teased that Perrin is going to be in this book. And I was slightly disappointed because he did not show up for most of the book, well, up until the last couple hundred pages. Now, I will say I kind of like that Robert Jordan did this. Now, although Robert Jordan is fantastic at building backstory and developing characters and creating like political tension and tension between relationships, sometimes it can definitely be described as meandering. It takes a really, really long time for things to happen. So to have Perrin show up with a ton of people from Two Rivers that he and others who have migrated to Two Rivers, he's obviously moved them a huge distance. And although I wish we could have seen that story, I am glad that he was just thrown straight into the thick of things because it really sped up the story and made us have an incredible scene at the end, which I'll get into in a minute. One small thing that happened is once Rand and Perrin are reunited, a lot has happened since the last time they saw each other. So they're almost, different characters. Not completely, but definitely developed more than they last saw each other. And they're trying to figure out, is the other person still the same person, but also getting the right thing for them and who they're responsible for. And we get chapters from each of their perspectives, and both of them think the same thing. So both of them, when they're trying to negotiate and figure out what the other one's all about, thinks, what a way to think of a friend. And what that means is they're both surprised by how they think themselves about the other person. And that's one thing Robert Jordan does really, really well. He does teach some life lessons, and one thing he always teaches is that the other person, if you actually stop to communicate, which is a huge theme of this book, people not actually communicating, then you would see that everybody actually thinks quite similarly and quite alike. So let's move on to the big things. So the first thing is that one of the Aes Sedai that was sent by Egwene, the new Merlin, is attempted an assassination upon by somebody who looks like an Aiel. Now, even when I read this chapter or this section, I knew that was going to be a Shido Aiel, and that was clearly not Rand's idea to send out. The goal of that was to drive a wedge between Rand and the Aes Sedai who were sent by Egwene so that he would flee to the other location and other city and hopefully build a stronger relationship with the Aes Sedai sent from Eleda and the White Tower. And it was so obvious. The second thing that was extremely obvious was that the Aes Sedai were going to, the Aes Sedai in the city where he fled to, sent by Eleda, was going to sneak in extra Aes Sedai as the serving people carrying the chests. When I first read that, before it was even revealed, I knew Rand had made a huge mistake. And I don't know if that's his ego coming into play, very much potentially, but I think mainly it's just his scatterbrainedness and the fact that he has to try and deal with, 50 different factions at once. He didn't consider that as a possibility, but it just really unearthed and showed the true colors of those Aes Sedai with Eleda as to how brutally he was treated as a prisoner as well. So he's captured and is going to be essentially hustled all the way back to Tar Valon. So boom, there we have it. We have 100 pages left or so, and Rand has just been captured. He's being absolutely tortured by these Aes Sedai, and I don't think there's a real big purpose to that. I just think they were kind of evil, which again shows their true colors. So my big fear was that I had 100 pages left. Robert Jordan isn't really known for making things happen quickly, in my opinion. So I was so afraid I was going to be left with a huge cliffhanger at the end of the book, but I wasn't. Instead of being left with a huge cliffhanger, I get an incredible scene, maybe one of the best, definitely top 5 scenes from the series so far, and he essentially is rescued by everybody who he's had a positive influence on in this story so far. We have ogres, we have Asha'man, we have Aes Sedai, we have wolves, we have Perrin, Two Rivers folk, Aiel, people from all the nations that he has united or conquered, depending on how you look at it, all come together to save their boy Rand. And these types of scenes, this is what you read fantasy for, or this is what I read fantasy for. Now, do I love relationship building? 100%. Do I love understanding the lore and development of character and all of the different things that come with fantasy? I do. I don't care how uppity your taste is. I don't care how sophisticated of a reader you think you are. Like, scenes like the final battle scene in this and the rescue are just so exciting, and it's what fantasy is all about. And we end the book, well, almost end the book, and there's one extra chapter where he throws out like 10, small paragraphs that could mean anything, and we'll get onto that in a minute. We end the book with the Aes Sedai, who are loyal to Egwene, swearing fealty to Rand, essentially fulfilling a prophecy that we heard earlier. And the first thing I would say is, the Aes Sedai sent by Eleda, I'm so glad they got their comeuppance. Like, it was so nice to see them be... and it sounds horrible, see them be stealed and cut off from the source, and some of them killed and murdered. And the reason why is because I find it so hard to like these characters, and I know that they're super popular, not necessarily those Aes Sedai, but I know as a whole Aes Sedai are really, really popular in the community. So I thought about this before I was going to say it, but I think the truth is the most important thing. I get really frustrated reading the Aes Sedai, and the reason for that is the Aes Sedai, 95% of them are dismissive, arrogant and egotistical, and I was trying to understand why they frustrate me so much to read about, and I came to the conclusion is that 95% of them have no reason to be. I know they go through tough training, and I know that they can do magic, and as a whole, they don't kill and murder and maim people, which is fantastic, because that's what you should do anyway. But if you have all of that power, I understand it would be hard not to. But I think 95% of them don't deserve to have that kind of ego and that haughty arrogance that they uphold, because I don't know what they've done. How have they improved the world? I know that they shape things and move nations, and they advise the leaders of nations as well, which makes them really important. But from what I've read, it doesn't necessarily mean they advise them for the good of the world. It seems that they advise them based on what they want to happen. So I think that's where my deep line frustration comes from the Aes Sedai, and it was so nice to see such a humbling of such a big faction of Aes Sedai as well, which might be an unpopular opinion, but the truth is important. And we also really saw the proper debut of Rand's Asha'man. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I should have looked that up beforehand. But these guys are kind of the opposite. We've only seen a small amount of them, but they seem to be doers. And what I mean by that is instead of having this huge ego in the way, I'm sure a ton of them are, very egotistical with these newfound powers. But as a unit, they seem to have a do whatever it takes attitude, and that's really great for a story. However, I will say that I do have a newfound respect for Aes Sedai with regards to them deciding not to use magic for aggressive and violent means, because reading those scenes where the Asha'man it was described as a meat grinder destroying the Shido. I know it's only a book, so I wasn't horrified, but reading it was grimly effective, and it was kind of like the atom bomb being invented for this story. So I now know how effective channelers can be against the regular Joe, and although it's great when it comes down to the final battle, if they're able to do that for Trollocs, etc., it really gives our squad a fighting chance. It was a bit grim to read about, and to see how violent channeling can be. It's interesting, and it really ups the game and raises the stakes of this story, that we need to have control of those who can channel, and we can't have Forsaken running around, or the Dark One running around with that type of power. And then at the end, there's 4 or 5 small chapters where there's many permutations that can come from there. So I have some extra predictions. So one thing that gets talked about is Mat's Ter'angreal. It's fantastic. It stops the female half of channeling being able to affect the wearer as long as it's on their skin. Now, Elaine is now aware of it, and so are some others over there in Ebou Dar. So I think now that has come to the forefront, figuring out how that works is going to make a huge difference to the rest of this story. Because if they can reverse engineer it, figure out how it works, but also create one that stops men's channeling working on someone as well, then are they not invincible if they can also channel? So that will be interesting. I do think for us to figure out the secrets to that, though, we are going to have to learn more about what is through the Ter'angreal that Matt went through. First time with the people who look like foxes, and the second with the people who look like snakes, or it might have been vice versa. So we're going to learn a lot more about them, and I'm excited about that. They're very mysterious. We also have a lot of mention of the game, Snakes and Foxes. So it's clear that they've had an influence on the world that this is set in, and they've kind of been ignored up to now, and they're such magical creatures that I'm really excited to learn more about those. And if they can unlock that Ter'angreal, that must be the key to winning, you know, this huge chunk of this war. We also revisit a lot of Perrin's wolf-like abilities, and that's awesome. I feel like that was underused. Really, we saw the pinnacle of it in this book, I would guess. You know, thousands of wolves descending on the Shido. My prediction for Perrin is he's going to obviously be a leader of people. Now, I know he's Tavaran, and what that means is that people are drawn to him anyway. But of all of them, like Rand, Matt, and himself, he's the one who seems to exert the least pressure over people and have people follow him just off of like instinct. So I think having him as a high ruler is, you know, inevitable in this book. He's going to lead a huge amount of people. Back to the Asha'man, Mazrim Taim, I think long term he's going to be a bad guy because Lews Therin clearly hates him. He goes mental every time he's close to him. However, I kind of like him. He seems to just have this attitude of, I'm just going to do whatever it takes to win. The speed at which he's built these Asha'man and trained them has been really, really impressive. So for me, the big thing is when Logain gets there, and I assume he will, there will, of course, be a power struggle between those two and Rand as well. So I'm just really excited to see how that power struggle comes about. I don't know who's the strongest. I would guess Rand, but out of Mazrim Taim and Logain, who's going to be the strongest? How is the outgun going to come there? And Mazrim Taim is clearly the leader of the Asha'man right now. It's not Rand. Like twice Rand was almost had to battle an Asha'man because they didn't know who he was. And Mazrim Taim had to step in and explain, no, this is the guy that we're fighting for. So Rand needs to correct that as soon as possible. And after those Asha'man come in and saved him from the Aes Sedai, because it wouldn't have been possible without them coming and exerting the magical powers, I think he will. I think he needs to take a front seat in the training and development of these men. But you know, it's a matchbox ready to light up, because you know any of them could go insane at any time. So it's interesting. Now, I predict that the rest of the Aes Sedai are going to follow suit and swear fealty to Rand. In the next book, we have Egwene and all of her squadron from Saladar heading towards Tar Valon. And we also have Rand, who has just been wronged and beaten and bullied and tortured by the Aes Sedai on the latest orders. And he's going to be heading towards Tar Valon as well. I think what's going to happen is they're both going to arrive at the same time, and they're both going to have a completely different idea of how we're supposed to deal with the situation. Egwene will not want the tower destroyed. She'll want Aleida disposed of. And Rand will probably want hellfire to rain down. So it's going to be interesting how they figure that out. I do think that the Aes Sedai will be led by Egwene, you know, overall. She will depose Aleida somehow. And also, I think that she will swear fealty to Rand. But in the next book, we will also get the scene of Gawain kneeling to Egwene, sorry, because he escaped that final battle in this book with his younglings, I think it was. And the prediction is that he either kneels or kills Egwene. So I think that decision is when Egwene gets to Tar Valon, he has to decide whether to kneel and give the younglings over to Gareth Byrne and become a part of that army, or to battle Egwene to try and defend Tar Valon. But when he finds out that Rand didn't kill Morghese and that Elaine's on Egwene's side, I think he will kneel. Ebou Dar is going to be the main focus of the next book. That will be my prediction. Over there's a ton that could happen. We know that the Black Archer's over there, and I think that Morgideon, after her meeting with the Dark One, is going to head over there as well, and she will be furious for revenge. She's going to be so dangerous. I predict a kind of Tanchico situation over there, where there's like a ton of different factions warring and battling. The Sion-chan are teased to be heading over there as well in one of the final chapters, and I think that finally gives us a chance for Matt to meet the daughter of the Nine Moons, or Queen of the Nine Moons, and for that I think it was a marriage that's supposed to happen, so we'll get an opportunity for that in the next book as well. So that would be my prediction there. I also think the Sea Folk were ignored this book. Rand never even granted them the audience they deserve. I hope he doesn't estrange them, but he is also the Commodore, I think it's pronounced, to them. So I don't think that can happen. Like, they have to follow him based on prophecy. So I think they're going to be key in repelling the Seanchan, and then Mat will be key in tying the Seanchan to their cause by marriage, it would seem. Something else that happened was Herid was murdered. I believe Herid was the man, the strange and eclectic man that Rand set the task of figuring out, you know, kind of information about the wheel and how to seal the Dark One's prison up, and he was murdered. So what that would obviously suggest is that he discovered something. So I'm excited to find out what he discovered, and I think we will find that out in the next book. Maybe someone will go over, look at his notes, or maybe he sent a note out before he died, or you know, he must have left some kind of clue, otherwise he wouldn't have been included in the story at all. Lan has a new Aes Sedai. I think that storyline isn't very exciting. I haven't been too impressed with Lan. Hopefully he becomes a whole new man. But when Nynaeve figures out that he is attached to somebody else, that is going to be exciting. I'm excited to see her fury and how she manages to get him. And it's actually kind of the same situation for Alana and Rand as well. I think when Elaine figures out that Alana bonded her, I think that, you know, all hell will break loose from that as also. And my final thing is Lews Therin and Rand actually worked together. When he was stuck in the box, they actually communicated, decided to work together, see what they can do to help each other. And I think this is the start of the end for Rand al'Thor. I think we are going to, you know, the first time we get real chapters from Lews Therin's perspective, while it's Lews Therin's in Rand's head, it's going to be big. And I think we're going to lose Rand over the course of, you know, the next however many books I still have to read, and by the end we're going to have just Lews Therin. But the type of magic that we're going to have access to, and the knowledge and the depth of information and the new things that are going to come to light that are going to be crucial to the rest of the story is going to be huge, because Lews Therin it seems to be as old as time itself. So those are my predictions moving forwards. It's been a hell of a ride so far, and I can't wait for the next book. Now, having said that, this book took me almost a month to read because I stopped so many times because it was so jam-packed of information to make a video, edit a video, get the video out, and then go again. So although I'm absolutely loving this series, I am going to continue my theme of reading a different genre in between, just to keep these books fresh, exciting, and me hungry to read them as well. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and please do me a favor. If you know somebody who's reading these books or loves these books and you think they might enjoy this process that I'm going through with regards to reading them and sharing my information and thoughts and predictions, please send them the first video of this series, and let's get them on board. Like, the main fun of doing this is the community of you guys and being involved in it. So if you could do me that favor, I'd really appreciate it. Outside of that, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next time.